Hey Wolfpack, and welcome back. I hope you all are doing well, and I hope you all had a good week. First off, I'd like to thank so many of you for the genuinely nice comments last weekend. I am still going through a few issues personally, but I'd rather channel this energy and I'd rather shove it right back into the channel. I do still want to focus on this and I want to do so much more for the channel, but my life is just so busy right now. I'm trying the best I can. Spotify is going to be on hold for a very long time, unfortunately. But I do have some other things in the works going on right now. And with that said, today we're doing 3 more scary cult encounters. So, have you had any experiences with cults before? Comment down below. I'm very curious to hear them. Now, with that said, whether you're sitting around a campfire, on the night shift, or even laying in bed, let my voice soothe your nightmares. So, my friends and I were adventuring southern Canada to abandoned houses and buildings just to explore. One day, we heard about this abandoned house in a dense forest near Toronto. We went there and rented a hotel room. We went to the forest with some food, water, and all the gear we needed. Once we entered the forest, we got this feeling that someone was watching us from the distance. We weren't sure if it was us feeling spooked out or if it was real at all. It was very dark and we saw lights in the background, but we thought it was just cars on the road nearby. After a little bit more walking, we finally reached the house, and this is where my heart started to beat very fast. When this happens, all of my reflexes kick in, and I start to do everything in a rush, like quickly running for no reason. My friends began to laugh. When we got to the second floor, we heard voices in one room, and we slowly walked across the hallway to there, opened the door slowly, and found candles burnt out in a pentagram in a red substance. We figured the house was haunted, so we didn't expect much of it. Minutes later, we heard footsteps downstairs, so we began to rush to one of the rooms nearby. We quickly heard banging and talking. We all stayed very quiet. Then, we heard footsteps coming up the staircase, and they went towards the room with the candles. As we waited there for 10 minutes, nothing, and then we heard music playing. Chills went up my spine, and I told my friends, "We have to get out of here fast!" We slowly walked towards the staircase past the door, and I'll never forget what we saw. 2 big men in black clothing standing so incredibly calm. My heart dropped and I ran downstairs and out the door. My friends followed very quickly. Once we got outside, we sat there to catch our breath and we turned off our flashlights. We began to run again, but one of my friends had tripped and sadly fell. We started to see flashlights in the background moving towards us, and we turned our flashlights off and hid in a nearby bush. The people in black walked past us. One of them had a knife. We waited about 5 minutes in silence, and then, again, started to run towards our car. We made it to our hotel safely, but that day will always stay with me. A week after that day, we got a weird call from an anonymous person. The person had a very dark voice. They said, "Don't come back, or else." I quickly hung up the phone and just brushed it off as a prank call. A few days later, though, my friend CJ was driving to Walmart, and he was being followed by a black truck. It followed him to the store where it parked on the other side of the lot. When he got back to the car, he noticed that the truck was even closer. He thankfully made it home safely, but what he didn't notice is that they put a note on his car saying, "I found you." We quickly began to dial 911 and reported the situation. 2 days later, we got a death threat, and then we also noticed that a black truck would sit outside the hotel for about an hour. We usually thought nothing of it. In every little slice of suburbia, quietly tucked away in those cute little neighborhoods, referenced in the real estate pamphlets, there is always that one house. You know that one, the shit show house. Welcome to Saddle Downs. At one time, the best neighborhood in town, But now, amongst the perfectly manicured lawns and driveways with nary a spot of oil leakage, an unholy abomination that looks like an episode of Hoarders made sweet love to Fred Sanford's bread and butter elicits sighs and dramatic eye-rolling from all who reside there. They wonder out loud, how someone who can afford to buy here could live in that kind of mess? All of the damn nerve. Standing in the driveway, garden hose in hand, and meticulously rinsing my yard tools, I surveyed my crabgrass outbreak with disdain and boiled under the surface about what he's done to this once beautiful collection of domiciles. I know the property values here have completely gone to shit. How could they not? And it's me who has to live directly across the street from him. The trash, the junk, the 1989 Geo Metro with no hood, the kiddie pool full of slime and frogs. For frick's sakes, he has 3 VCRs stacked beside the mailbox. Yes, I said VCRs. And is it so damned hard to cut your grass on Tuesdays like the rest of us? I wanted to try the new edger I picked up during a July 4th sale, 40-volt, top of the line. But as of right now, I haven't even seen the point. My yard will look like shit no matter what, because of him. The neighborhood association wouldn't even help. If it's anything other than potholes or barbecues, they have a hands-off approach to governance. I plan to run for president in the spring. Anyway, I could feel my blood pressure going through the roof that night, and the plant-based diet I switched to wasn't doing shit to help bring it down. Something had to be done about him. Ladies and gentlemen, meet Alan. Mid-50s, twice married and twice divorced. He works as an IT contractor for the state. Being stuck at home because of COVID, I hadn't seen him outside in months. Who needs to go outside when you have Grubhub and your lawnmower is lying next to your house in 100 pieces? He had made a perfect hermit's life, intrinsically safe from those of us who only asked for a little bit of respect for the neighborhood. So, imagine my surprise when at 6 p.m. last Friday evening, he suddenly stumbles out the front door, down the steps, and begins cleaning up his yard. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. I was so stunned that I forgot the hose was still on until it soaked my favorite pair of Duluth trading khakis. I blinked a few times to confirm what I was seeing. Alan was actually cleaning. I quickly gathered my tools and hung them in their outlined spots in the pegboard my wife, Karen, got me for Father's Day. Her essential oils business has really taken off lately, and she's starting to spoil me. It's amazing what people will do with some of her concoctions. She's got proven anecdotal evidence of the efficiency of her blends. She's healed everything from spider bites to yeast infections with those little bottles of miracle juice. I practically sprinted into the house to let her know what Alan was up to, making sure to sit by the window the rest of the evening. I continued to peek out at my new favorite neighbor during commercial breaks in the Sean Hannity show. I wanted so badly to go to talk to him about it, but I was terrified that interrupting his task would jinx my good fortune. When I went to bed around 9:30, Alan was still hard at it and showed no signs of slowing. The next morning at 6:15, I heard the familiar beeps that signal a large vehicle moving in reverse. I nearly fell over trying to slip into my Crocs to get to the porch and have a look. A massive flatbed truck was dropping a 30-foot-long dumpster in the yard. Alan was really getting serious. I couldn't take it any longer. I had planned to spend the day applying epoxy to my garage floor, but it was Alan's project I was truly excited about now. I had to go over there. Quickly putting on some work-quality clothes, I calmly made my way down to the driveway and across the street. The yard was already looking better, but it really did have a long way to go. Alan was working like a madman. He's about 5'6" and half as wide as he is tall. What remained of his light brown hair was shaggy and unkempt, and he always wore the same outfit: dark gray suit pants, worn-out loafers, and one of those silky short-sleeved dress shirts with vertical stripes that were popular in the early 1980s. Despite the less-than-ideal attire for the task at hand, Alan was working his ass off, and so would I. It was clear that absolutely nothing in the yard would escape the dumpster's insatiable appetite, so, without a word, I fell in beside him and set to work. It was a beautiful free-for-all, and I was having the time of my life. I practically pranced around the yard, grabbing up anything I felt capable of getting over the side of the giant trash receptacle. Toys, scrap, metal, fast food trash, some ugly-ass yard ornaments Alan's ex-wife had set out back in the late 90s, plastic frogs and flamingos, bleached and dried brittle by 20-plus years of sun and weather cycles. It was the most fun I've had since the free resort weekend I scored just for attending a timeshare seminar and buying a share of a sweet villa in Branson, Missouri. Oddly enough, though, after a solid half hour of work, Alan hadn't said a word, or even acknowledged my presence for that matter. I finally broke the ice. "Hey, buddy, I thought I'd just come over here and give you some help. You got a big-ass job on your hands here, and it'll be totally worth the effort. I even have a perfect grass seed blend for you. I came up with it myself after a long battle with clover. You won't believe how good it'll look in a few weeks." Alan never acknowledged my presence. He just continued, pushing himself harder and harder. His hair was all over the place and sweat had soaked through his clothes from head to toe. A thought suddenly hit me. I lightly grabbed him by the upper arm and said, "Hey, Alan, did you ever stop last night?" "No." I pressed further. "You didn't come in at all? You've just been out here non-stop?" "Yes." It was killing me. I risked ruining everything, but I had to ask. "Hey man, why are you suddenly cleaning up after 20 years of neglecting your yard and ignoring everyone who has ever asked you to do something about it?" Under labored breath, still without slowing even a step or glancing my direction, he said, "They're coming." I inquired further, "Who's coming? You're having family get-together? Pampered chef party? Jehovah's Witnesses stopping by to check on your soul?" Alan suddenly snapped up, lunged at me, and screamed directly in my face, "No, no, no, no!" He abruptly turned and went right back to picking up a large chunk of a broken toilet covered in wet leaves, heaving it into the dumpster and waddling to the other side of the driveway to begin unearthing an old riding mower covered in the remnants of a splintered water bed frame. I was a bit caught off guard by the aggression. Regardless, I was so happy to see Alan's grass for the first time since April 22nd, 2001, that I was willing to overlook his anger. Still though, at that point, I felt it was best to just go on back home. I went ahead and started on my garage floor project. I backed my RAV4 into the driveway. I didn't have to deal with Karen's Volvo because she had an early appointment at the hair salon. Then, planned to return some things at a department store she felt were dishonestly presented by the salesperson. I think she planned on giving that manager a piece of her mind. After a few more days of cleaning outside, inside, and having a huge fence built around the yard, Alan's place was looking great. I decided I would go shake the hands of whatever visitors he was having that he motivated him to take on his glorious project. As it turned out, I was given the opportunity to do so sooner than expected. Alan's guests arrived the very next day. It was an interesting-looking bunch that piled out of a few of those monster passenger vans. Upon closer inspection, I saw the side of them said Zip Life Holistics. Everyone looked to be under 40 or so, and some of them couldn't have been much past their high school years. Athletic wear, more specifically tracksuits, was the prevailing choice in attire for every single one of them. Each of them wore a different color though, and when they got out of the vans, it was like someone dumped a bag of Skittles onto the driveway. Their energy was boundless, running, jumping, and shouting loudly with the same enthusiasm I feel when my grass finally reaches the 4.5-inch mark and I get to fire up the Cub Cadet. God, I love that mower. Everyone congregated in the front yard, surrounding Alan and giving him endless handshakes and pats on the back. Alan looked exhausted, but he had put on his best smile for the greeting. Behind that big smile, though, terror filled his eyes. The next morning at 7 on the dot, the cheers began. "Who lives their life with zip and pride? We do, we do! Who flows with joy they cannot hide? We do, we do!" They did this over and over and over for a solid 15 minutes, stopping only to cheer and clap. Finally, they shut it down and bounded off to the van where a woman was handing out leaflets of some sort. They began to sprint off throughout the neighborhood, so after all of them were gone, I sauntered over to talk to Alan. He was alone in the yard, dressed in a lime green tracksuit and doing jumping jacks. I feigned enthusiasm. "Hey, buddy, how's it going with the visitors?" "They're sure an energetic bunch." His attitude had turned 180 degrees completely. "Oh, hey, Brad. Yeah, they're stupendous. What a great bunch of people. They're gonna change the life of everyone in this neighborhood. Just you wait and see." Despite Alan's zeal, I was a bit skeptical, and still a touch unnerved by the arrival of these health ambassadors. I mean, maybe they could help the neighborhood get back on track. Quarantine had really taken its toll on the midsection and hindquarters of just about everyone in the Saddle Downs. Working from home was awesome, but the cafeteria choices were endless now. Eating had become a sport for me by that point. I figured I could try and get back on board. It was just a bunch of overzealous kids, right? "Well, Alan, I suppose all of us could use some guidance right now. And maybe they've got some techniques to help us avoid this, plague, right?" "Oh, most definitely, Brad, most definitely. You'll see." That was enough for me for the moment. As I started back on my own yard, I turned back and asked Alan how he got involved with these people. "I met them on the internet playing an ORPG called, Second Life." I had no idea what that was, but the answer was good enough for me. I cruised back over to the house, figuring Karen had my kale shake ready to go, along with a little avocado and falafel on toast, and that would likely not hit the spot. As the day wore on, I kept an eye on things out of the streets of Saddle Downs. The lifers, as I'll refer to them, were going door to door with their flyers. Some successfully gained entry to make what I presumed was their sales pitch, while others maintained that huge smile and boundless enthusiasm after being turned away at the door. They did, however, leave a small yellow sticker on the mailbox on the way out. Alan continued to exercise, with one of the Zip Life zealots cheering him on. Eventually, a couple of them were on my doorstep. It was the first time I had seen any of them up close, and the only way I can describe them accurately is to say, they dazzled. The startlingly attractive young man and women before me had perfectly straight, shockingly white teeth. Their aroma was fantastic, like some sort of blend of sugar cookies and Tide Pods, clean and sweet. It was intoxicating. Their eyes were big, bright, and full of life, reminding me of those things that endlessly swirl and put you in a daze while the hypnotist snatches your wallet. The whites were white enough to make me squint, and their irises were vivid in color and matched their tracksuits. The young man's orange irises didn't have that fake look when you see color contacts, either. I think they were legit, which, for a split second, sent a chill down my spine. As the young man began his pitch, perfectly straight, blindingly white teeth opened to a mouth that said, "Hello, sir. I'm Tanner, and this is Kylie. We're friends of your neighbor, Alan Randall, and are representatives of the world's #1 door-to-door health and wellness company, Zip Life Holistics." I have no idea what he said after that. All I remember is smiling dreamily, looking back and forth between their mesmerizing eyes, skin that appeared to have disco balls embedded in its pores, and feeling compelled to only breathe through my nose. I found my feet shifting below me as I pushed open the storm door and welcomed them into my home, floating in sheer ecstasy. I led them to the couch, where they sat down and produced a flyer for me to read. At that moment, all I could think about was how much I wanted to please these strangers, how I would do absolutely anything for Taylor and Kylie. Yes, I'll sign those forms. Yes, I'll be ready at 10 p.m. on Friday. Sure, I'll be eating nothing but raw, organic foods until then. I'll do everything just as you wish. I just want to be well for you. Thank you for saving me. Thank God for Karen. She had been in the kitchen, live streaming one of her super coupon videos. She only has 152 subscribers, and hadn't noticed Tanner and Kylie's entrance until the smell hit her. "Who's here? That's not Gain. That's Tide. That shit is expensive. Someone needs a coupon lesson." She stopped dead in her tracks when she saw me starting to sign papers. "Don't you sign anything, Brad. They're probably gonna hit your credit card for $100 a month or something. You kids skedaddle. Didn't you see the magnet on my car? I blend essential oils. Do you know what that means? It means get the heck out of my house with your worthless pills or whatever other malarkey you're peddling. It ain't happening, not on my watch." The two beautiful, amazing-smelling lifers smiled, thanked me for my time, and gave Karen a little death stare as they made for the door. Karen followed them into the yard, yelling the whole way, "Don't you make a face at me! I've got your leaflet in the house, and don't you think for a second that I won't call your manager about these shady tactics you're using." I exhaled sharply and ran my hands across my face to wake up a bit. When I looked back up, they were gone, and one of those little yellow stickers adorned our mailbox. Karen gave me a bit of a scolding after she came back inside, but I did deserve it. I didn't last too long, though, because she had to get to work on a big batch of potato salad to take to a party at my office. Those people love her recipe. The rest of the lifers eventually congregated back at Alan's house. It looked like they were camping in the backyard, which is probably why Alan had that absurdly high fence installed. Around 7 p.m., things got weird. Firstly, there was more cheering. After the noise subsided, I could hear a lot of grunting and groaning, and eventually curiosity got the best of me. I grabbed a ladder and made my way up to the roof. Our houses are more diagonally lined up, so, with a bit of height, I got a pretty clear view of Alan's backyard. It looked like they were performing feats of strength. Some of them began picking up landscaping rocks the size of watermelons, followed by each taking a turn throwing theirs across the yard as far as possible. The best throw was about 15 feet, which was really far for a rock that I would guess weighs around 200 pounds. The winner? Kylie. All 5'2" and 120 pounds of her. After that, some of the men locked arms and legs, building upon each other for some kind of creation, bodies twisted and contorted, eventually taking the shape of a wheel, complete with human spokes. One of the women gave them a push, and off they went, rolling across the yard. It was an impressive feat of strength and flexibility, and just a touch unsettling. The wheel made it back around the yard, and several more of the men stood on other shoulders on both sides of the wheel, eventually revealing themselves to be posts. The entire contraption together became a freaky Ferris wheel. Someone gave it a push, and off it went, slowly rotating on an axis made on the backs of their brethren. That was both mesmerizing and freaky, but a big group of the women, however, really pushed the envelope. The men began to chant, "Do it! Do it! Do it! Do it!" It took a few minutes for it all to come together, but after everyone was in position, I was looking at all 20 of the women bent into impossible positions and exercising body control that would require the strength of a herd of elephants. Arms bent backwards, shoulders dislocated, and twisted in ways that would paralyze any normal person. I felt bile rise in my throat, even viewing it from over 100 feet away. All the disgusting contortions came together, and suddenly, I was looking at a 10-foot-tall spider with the entire body and 8 legs made of people who should have been dead from their positioning alone. It wasn't unstoppable. It wasn't about to collapse like one of those shitty popsicle stick houses we made in kindergarten. Had it not been so terrifying, it would have been nothing short of magnificent. And then that spider walked and ran. Their bodies were in perfect harmony as it ran across the backyard. More chanting began. "Spider! Spider! Spider! Spider!" Continuing to run with absolute accuracy, they began to emit a clicking sound that I can only describe as to how a spider sounds in a movie. My skin crawling at this point. Then, as if the situation couldn't get any more bizarre and terrifying, I watched as that human spider crawled right up the back wall of Alan's 3-story house and onto the roof, and when it stopped, I realized that before it crawled up to the house, several of the men had jumped on and stacked themselves close to the front of the spider's body. Their heads were packed tightly together, and their eyes became the spider's eyes, and they blinked in unison. Then it shifted a bit, the legs, the body, and those eyes rotating around while a few dozen mouths emitted that ticking sound. In a side profile stance, facing off in the distance, it stood. It felt as if everything around me had gone silent. This wasn't just funny or creepy anymore, it was downright scary. And as I soaked it all in and began to wonder what the hell I was really witnessing, I watched, horrified as every lifer on that hideous creation turned their head towards me, and they smiled. I slept like absolute shit that night. After the spider spent a few minutes twitching around the roof and looking at me, they crawled back down to the yard and disassembled. Eventually, everyone settled down, and I didn't hear anything else until early morning when the daily cheering began again. I must admit, the spider really scared me. When I said those girls got into impossible positions, I was not exaggerating. I was looking at fully dislocated shoulders and hips, spines twisted up like paper clips, and heads that twisted completely around. These were not normal people. This routine continued for the rest of the week. Wake up and cheer, work the neighborhood, cheer some more, do weird shit in the backyard until dark, including but not limited to relay races on their hands, professional style wrestling without padding, duck duck goose and red rover with tackling, forming a human snake 50 feet long and slithering around the house for 45 straight minutes with everyone making a sound and flicking their tongues. Then, every few minutes, coiling up and striking at imaginary things. They did try to make their pitch to us once each day, becoming more persistent as the week progressed, but Karen always shooed them off. On their Friday afternoon visit, she even sprayed them with lavender oil. Tanner looked pissed about it too. As the days wore on, though, I noticed the little yellow stickers eventually being removed, and figured my weak-minded neighbors were finally giving in and agreeing to the presentation. Not Karen, though. She's hardcore about this kind of thing. 4 days into this adventure, I noticed something. I had never seen them eating, drinking, or going into the house to use the bathroom. I did see twice a day they were given a shot glass worth of some kind of liquid, which I presumed was whatever product they must be selling. Despite it all, the neighborhood was still running normally. People came and went, cars were washed, and dogs were walked. Mrs. Bush down the street was in her front yard, drunk and arguing with her adult son, who was also drunk, about his chronic unemployment and wasting his government money on cheap women. Friday night, Karen and I were sipping some of our favorite craft beer on the porch when we noticed an abnormally large number of people heading down the street. I recognized some of the faces and others were foreign to me, but they all turned into Alan's driveway and formed a line that extended a ways down the street. I suddenly recalled something on Tanner and Kylie's pamphlet about being there on Friday at 10 p.m. A quick check of my watch confirmed that it was in fact 10 p.m. Now, I was really interested to see what was going down. I moved from the porch to the living room to watch one of these quarantine MLB games, which was almost as weird as watching the lifers do their thing. I kept a constant eye on the goings-on at Allen's, though, and as the evening wore on, the traffic really picked up. For hours, I sat there watching neighbors get in line, looking completely happy and relaxed, no doubt enjoying the scent of sugar, cookies, and eye candy the lifers provided. Waiting their turn to go behind the gate, several of the lifers looked to almost be standing guard there, with more standing along the streets in front of the house. All night long, the cycle was the same. Person goes through the gate on one side of the house, followed by a few minutes of silence, horrific screaming, followed by the lifers clapping and cheering. Then, the person shuffled out the gate on the other side of the house and very slowly shuffled home. By 2 a.m., I couldn't stand it anymore. I had to get a look behind the house again, even if it was a shitty angle. I was headed for the roof again. I grabbed my ladder and began my ascent. As I reached the top rung and my head cleared the roof line, I heard a voice coming from below, accompanied by the very faint smell of sugar cookies. It was Tanner. "Hey, Brad! What you doing up there?" He gave the ladder a little shake. "I don't think it's safe to be up on the roof this late. Why don't you come down and go back in the house?" "Kylie said Karen looks pretty lonely in bed." They were watching Karen sleep? Now I was angry. I felt a surge of adrenaline, and it was finally time to tell this asshole what I really thought of him and his stupid lifer friends. Tanner, why don't you get the hell out of my yard and go back to your weird-ass cult across the street before I call the cops? Tanner chuckled and said, Brad, your neighbor, the chief of police, is in line at Allen's right this minute. You know that, right? And then he literally jumped straight up, 30 feet, to my roof. Tanner crouched directly in front of me, grabbed my ladder, and tipped me a foot back from the edge, literally holding my life in his right hand. His orange eyes glowed like two big fireflies in the darkness. Brad, everything is fine over there. It would really be in your best interest to climb back down this very unstable ladder and get the hell back in your house. I nodded, scared shitless. My adrenaline surged again as I gripped that ladder with every ounce of strength I had. There was no exit plan here if he let me go, and I am not ashamed to admit that I wet my pants. Okay, Tanner, I'll go back inside. Please move my ladder back and let me climb down. And just like that, he returned the ladder to a safe angle, got in a high dive position, and did a gainer off the roof, landing perfectly on his feet. When I stepped off, he was directly in my face. He did not smell like cookies and Tide now. He smelled musty, like an old museum. The glimmer in his skin came and went like static on a TV, and his eyes no longer dazzled. He looked tired, as if he'd used up every ounce of his normally boundless energy. That's the last thing I remember. I woke up on the couch around 7 o'clock. My drool-covered shirt was turned halfway around my torso, and one of my socks was missing in action. I felt absolutely awful. Every muscle ached to some degree, and my feet felt like they were made of lead. I was completely exhausted, and my back felt like it was on fire. I made it to the kitchen and tried to get my head together. Out of nowhere, I was suddenly ready to murder someone for some bacon, or sausage, or a bagel with lox, or some Lay's potato chips, or a big glass of seawater. I threw my middle finger in the air and turned in a circle to let all the components of Karen's stupid plant-based diet know what I thought of them. Dr. Ornish could shove it. Actually, I guess he wouldn't, though. I practically dragged myself to the window to see what the lifers were up to, and they were gone. I was startled as Karen emerged from the hallway, tripped, and fell flat on her face, sending half a dozen essential oil vials flying across the room. I was too tired to even try to help her up. Groaning, she pushed herself up on her elbows. What the hell happened last night, Brad? The last thing I remember is that Kylie girl standing beside my bed speaking in another language. There were bits of English mixed in there. She said something like we are ancient, older than death itself, and then something about cows and pigs no longer being sufficient. I looked at her like she had three eyes. Not only was I in tremendous pain, I was feeling a little combative. What? Are you drunk? Did you put too much lemongrass and yang-yang in your tea again last night? When Karen is pissed, her voice normally gets really nasally, and her A's are literally enough to burst eardrums. After my smart-ass comment, I really had it coming though. No, Brad! She said it! She said that shit! And the last thing of it I recall is her rolling me onto my stomach and saying, "Thanks, bitch. I'll fill you back up with more Juram." She had managed to stand again, and doubled over in pain and hit the floor once more. Damn it, Brad! Why does my back hurt so bad? I looked down at her exposed back. It was swollen and red, and she had a tiny hole or a needle mark just above each kidney, and I had the same. What the heck was up there? Trying to look at my own back, I began turning in circles like a dog trying to sniff its own butt. Karen, look at these holes in my back. What's in that spot? She had spent a few years in nursing school back in the day before quitting to sell door-to-door cosmetics, and God only knows what other flavor of the week MLMs that came about. She thought about it for a moment. I think that's an adrenal gland. What the? Did they steal our adrenaline? I helped Karen to her feet. We plopped ourselves down at the kitchen table, and I blacked out. 3 hours later, I woke up, my cheek smashed down on the table. Surrounding me was the remnants of a bag of beef jerky, a jar of pickles with no juice, and my mouth was caked in what tasted like feta cheese. Karen was on the floor, blocking the doorway threshold and mumbling something in her sleep about not needing a receipt. Peeking out from under the edge of her robe was what was left of the block of feta. I shuffled my way to the bathroom, stripped off my disheveled and urine-stained clothes, and let a hot shower take me away to paradise. God, I was thirsty. Karen says the chlorine and fluoride in city water is bad for me, but I didn't care. I drank it right out of the faucet. After getting cleaned up, I stepped out onto the patio for some fresh air. Many of my neighbors were out and about, moving like they were 100 years old, but trying to do the normal stuff, taking walks, washing cars, and other things. I gingerly made my way next door to speak to my buddy Mike. He had been out of town most of the week, but I saw him in line last night. I caught up to him as he was checking his mail. "Hey Mike, how's it going?" He looked terrible. "Hey Brad. Man, I feel like complete shit. I don't know what the hell happened to me last night. I haven't felt this bad since I got completely plastered at your Super Bowl party." I vividly remember that event. Mike, the 50-year-old accountant, attempted a backflip on a dare and landed on his face. I looked at him quizzically. "You mean you don't remember being at Allen's? Going behind the fence for the Zip Life product demonstration?" He closed the mailbox and looked back up at me. "The what? Zip who?" "I haven't spoken with Alan in months. I'd like to kiss him right now on the mouth, though, for finally cleaning up his property. I wish I had been there to see it. Damn, dude, my back is killing me." He turned and raised his shirt, and sure enough, the same swelling and holes in his back. I told him what I suspected had happened to us, but he had absolutely no recollection of the lifers ever having set foot in Saddle Downs. I was too tired to press the issue, and Mike didn't seem to care about the holes in his back. It's like his memory and even his sense of self-preservation was just absent. I ended the conversation and made my way a couple of houses down, intercepting a lady named Sandra, as she very slowly made her way through the morning walk she's taken every single day for 23 years. We had the same conversation. She had the same marks, and like Mike, had no memory of the night before. I tried several others and got more of the same. Finally, I headed for Alan's house, banging hard on the door. When he answered, it was clear that I had woken him up. He was wearing nothing but a pair of very old, very undersized boxers. Hey Brad, what's up?" "Alan, I've had enough of this shit. What the hell did those people do to everyone last night?" He looked completely confused. "What? What are you talking about? Who?" I roared with every ounce of strength I had left. "The Zip Life people, Alan. They jacked everyone up. We all have holes above our kidneys and no one knows why. I'm the only one that even remembers them being here." All of a sudden, it was like a light bulb went off. Alan's eyes nearly popped out of his skull. I exhaled sharply, relieved that someone could finally shed some light on all of this. Alan jumped through the door, darting back and forth across the porch, giving evil stares to everyone he could see. As he flew by me, for the third time, I caught a look at his shirtless back. There was nothing. No holes, no swelling, just a nice plump back with enough hair on it to sculpt a mohawk. As he ran out into the street with murder in his eyes, naked aside from the underwear hanging halfway down his ass, I knew the story had ended. I wasn't going to get my answer, because I knew what the next words out of his mouth would be. Wide-eyed and practically foaming at the mouth with rage, he said, "Which one of you assholes cleaned up my yard?" This was 2 or 3 years ago. My family at the time loved taking cruises in our city, and especially the beach. When we would attend the beach, we would cruise for hours until it would be dark. This one time we went, we were a little late than usual, and it was getting dark, so we decided to head back home on the main street. The way this beach is set up is where you can drive on the beach, or on the road. The road was higher than the beach though, if that makes sense. Basically, from the road, you can see the beach at the bottom. Anywho, this beach isn't necessarily isolated, but it's not packed because there are better and more popular beaches where I live. So, of course, since it's nighttime, the beach is empty with a few people like fishermen, but that was about it. A good 10 minutes down the road go by, and I noticed something on the beach. I'm on the passenger side, and the beach was on my side, so I had a pretty good view. I saw light, but not like a normal bonfire or flashlight. There were sticks planted on the beach on fire in a specific order. Of course, I was interested in seeing what they were doing. As we got closer, however, the people on the beach were very odd. They appeared to be wearing gowns of some kind, but I couldn't tell for sure. But once I saw a good view of what they were doing, I saw the satanic symbol built by the sticks on fire, and them holding their arms up also in a certain position. My family and I were shocked, and despite being far away from them, it was still frightening just to see it. My father immediately stepped on the gas pedal to get away from them as far as possible. To this day, I still don't know what kind of cult they are, and I regret not calling the police to let them investigate. I also think to myself, what if we were driving on the beach instead of the road? We would have definitely bumped into them, and God knows what would have happened. Ever since then, my family and I have never gone to the beach again, and just go to the more popular ones within our city. Thanks for listening, Wolfpack. If you want to submit your own story, the links for my email and subreddit will be down below. I've also created a Discord, so if you want to join that, the link will be in the description down below as well. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. And with that said, have beautiful nightmares, and I will see you next time.